Welcome, everyone, to my incredible chat that we are about to have with Coach Britt. We are going to talk all about the importance of paying attention to the gut in your health coaching practice. I know that we have a lot of people who work in the niche of gut health, so I thought this would be a really fun conversation to have, given that Coach Britt is the founder of the Holistic Wellness Coaching Academy. So welcome, Coach Britt.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So why don't we start off and you can share a little bit about what you do and how, this all came to be.
Yeah, so I got into health coaching probably a decade into being just an avid researcher of health. But at the time when I was researching health, in the traditional industry, they going to college, you're going to be an RD or an RN, or you're going to, and there's some things that just didn't align with me when I saw, and it was no slight to anyone in these professions. I actually train a lot of nurses. I train a lot of RDs and nurse practitioners and things like that too. But unfortunately, in the traditional trainings, kind of like we know with MDs, right? Like nutrition's what do they call it? Like an elective. Like if you want to know it, right? And for anybody who understands holistic health and real foundational functional wellness, for nutrition cannot be an elective. It is not an elective in its effect on our life. So
Right.
as a person who mental health is really what got me into gut health, because I struggled with severe anxiety, patchy depression since age 4. So from a child, this was horrible. I started missing school because of mental health in 2nd grade. But I would tell my parents my tummy hurts and things like that because kids don't know how to articulate it. And not ironically, these two things are very connected, right? The gut reactivity and our brain. And so I would go on for so many years. I was a very overweight child, all kinds of things. And I got into health and wellness more to change my body, to be desirable, to not be made fun of anymore like we do, right? And we did it the wrong way. I'm sure, Lori, you can, we're about in the similar age range, right? So I'm sure you can remember that, fat-free everything. Like you could eat cookies and whatnot, as long as you could stay under really low calories and keep your fat really low, then this is how we were going to get skinny. And unfortunately, maybe we did from doing these things that were horribly detrimental to our health, And so this wasn't unlike me, but that's how I got into health, right? I wasn't actually into health. I was into like weight loss and just trying to change my body and my experiences. And through doing that, I would just evolve and evolve and evolve. And I would go on to be a vegetarian for a while, and that had its ups. It had areas where it did good for me because I was eating more whole, real foods and I saw improvement in my health, my body, my mental health. But it wasn't until, like I said, 10 years into researching hormonal issues, 2 miscarriages, a lifetime of anxiety and depression, that I really came. It wasn't until my 2nd miscarriage that I had been a vegetarian and I was doing some things, and I'd evolved a lot. Now I eat a lot more whole foods and healthy things. But it made me really look at my diet, my lifestyle, and be like, is this really serving me? My hair was falling out. I was cold all the time. It seemed as though my thyroid was off. And so I'd research more and more, make some tweaks to my diet, to some things, and start researching. And I thought I was researching hormones because I was like, okay, this has got to be the foundation of my stuff. And hormones took me to the gut. And so it wasn't until 10 years after like all of this information I'd spent so long just in my own time, in my free time, just for the heck of it, just intaking, that I really came into health coaching, and it was a thing. So I had sold my brick and mortar business with, I had my 2nd son at the time, and I started training as a health coach and really then bringing gut health to the surface. And what was crazy is that the school I went to didn't know gut health. In fact, the founder of the school was having major gut issues. And so I actually started teaching it there. I actually ended up writing a book about it, like strictly just to get it out there to people, because it was this thing that when I stumbled upon it, I was like, oh my gosh, you just want to regurgitate it to the world because you're like, we can't not know this.
Yeah.
And my compassion for people with mental health, especially children, but anybody, was so great that I was like, this just needs to be out there. So I wrote the book with really no idea how to do it.
Mm.
As a mom, you'll appreciate this. As a business mom, I literally, at the time, this is before my divorce, but my husband at the time would work. He would work all day, and I was with our baby, and this was in my off time after selling my brick and mortar. And so I only had like 40 minutes to myself in an entire day. I had very attached infants. So they like ate and slept on me, and they were just like always on me, right? But my son, if I could drive him around in the car at nap time, he would fall asleep in his car seat for 40 minutes. So I would drive him around at nap time, and I would take that 40 minutes and a little like a tablet with a keyboard, and I would start writing this book. And that's how I invested in writing my book. The book turned into a course. I started teaching the course at the school I went to because they didn't know it. And we started really, and then we branched off to really help health coaches actually evolve and use these tools instead of just make money off multiple certifications, which was the direction the school was going.
Right. Right. I love that. And I have a very similar story to you. And it's really interesting. I think that a lot of specifically holistic nutritionists, dietitians, health coaches, life coaches, we get into this because we went through something, and we want to make sure that you know, people don't suffer like we did. And so when I was growing up, I had horrible gut issues, like horrible. I remember, I mean, this might be TMI, but I don't care. I remember getting my first yeast infection when I was in grade 5.
Yeah. And
Like I was in grade 5.
not everyone
And
pertains that to the gut.
right.
Meant
And
it.
the doctors certainly did not.
No.
But meanwhile, I had recurring ear infections as a young child. I was constantly on antibiotics. And so by the time I was in my teens, my late teens, after being away, going to university and traveling and all of this, my digestive system literally just stopped. And I couldn't stop vomiting, and all of this stuff was happening. And I went to all the doctors, and they said I have acid reflux. And I said, I can't lose weight. I'm getting recurring yeast infection. Like I had all the symptoms. Right now I know, but I had all the symptoms. And so they gave me a prescription for Prevacid, which is supposed to help with, acid reflux. It did nothing. I kept vomiting. I kept not being able to keep food down. I was 19. Like I was otherwise healthy. There was nothing they could find wrong with me. I was like, I'm not going to live like this. So my mom actually took me to a naturopathic doctor who said, you have this thing called leaky gut and candida, and you have to follow this strict protocol, which I did for an entire year. I was 20.
Wow.
And that was the first time that I learned about the connection between like the gut and everything else. And from then on, I was just obsessed with learning about it. And I finished university, excuse me, and I became a registered holistic nutritionist. And, now I'm here. But it's because I also had gut issues. And what I did as a nutritionist was I hid behind weight loss, but I secretly taught middle-aged women about digestion and helped them to fix their digestion. My niche was weight loss for menopausal women, but I mean, a lot of what I did was digestion with them.
Yes. And that's something we're going to talk about. I'm going to address here in a little bit is how it can be incorporated into every niche. Because a lot of people think gut health itself is a niche. So I won't, which it can be, but I won't get ahead.
Let's actually start there, because that I could just I get so fired up about this when my clients come and I say, what do you do? And they say gut health. I'm like, that's not a niche. That's not a painful problem.
Yeah, that's like nutrition. It's not a painful problem unless, so this is what's going to happen. If gut health itself is your niche, if that's just what you say, then what's going to happen is you're going to get people that just have GI specific issues that might come to you. And gut health is strongly correlated to so many other things: PCOS, cysts, irregular cycles and periods, skin conditions, mental health, extremely exacerbated symptoms of ADHD, autism spectrum disorder. I mean, the brain effect, even Alzheimer's, cognitive decline, joint pain, all types of inflammation, which everything's connected to inflammation, right? Every disease is connected to inflammation. Well, inflammation starts because of this dysbiotic gut causing this leaky gut that's then allowing stuff into the bloodstream, and the immune system attacks. So when you can understand this is how it works, you realize like, whoa, this is so huge. So people may not understand that gut health isn't a niche, but the problem is your right clients won't necessarily understand it. You're just going to have people with probably GI specific complaints that have gotten bad enough that maybe they're coming to you, as opposed to saying, okay, I specialize in PCOS or, perimenopause, utilizing holistic gut health and the brain gut connection. If I were still coaching individuals, which I only coach coaches in this, but if I were still coaching individuals, my niche would be working with mental health and brain function. I specialize in anxiety and brain function, utilizing holistic gut health and the brain gut connection, right? And so it's this tool that allows this more in-depth kind of foundational work, but it's still not your niche per se. I mean, you can do it that way, but you're going to be like a lot of other people where you're like, I'm a health coach and I specialize in nutrition. Okay, so you might get some people that are like, I just need to learn how to eat better because you said nutrition, but it's not micro specific. Like, you're going to be too generic, and you're going to do yourself a disservice in not being more specific with your niche and
Yes.
business, making yourself stand out more too.
Mhm. And I think that's so important where we're talking about sort of the root cause, right? And that's the way that I like to explain it. It's like your niche is basically the persistent painful problem that they're saying that they have. And so the root cause of the anxiety, of the depression, of the acne, of all of these things is the gut health, right? Like, or the lack thereof. And that's how you help them. But that's not, people don't want to buy gut health. They're not going to come to you and say, can you help me with my gut health? Because nobody talks about it that way, right? It's the same as saying, like, to your point, nutrition or wellness or vitality or even energy.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, we can, debate this. I think you and I would probably be on the same team as this, but like almost everything comes back to gut health. So if you're struggling with confidence in terms of like, how am I actually going to help these clients? Right.
Mhm.
Becoming an expert in gut health is a really great way to be able to support clients in whatever niche you choose, like acne, like painful periods, like menopause, right?
Mhm.
All of these things, if you can address the gut, they're good. The clients are going to get better.
Absolutely. And see, this is what brings me to this aspect of it, is that the gut is so powerful in everything. So you can't just have protocols for skin health. You can't just have, I mean, I'll, die on my own,
I'm with you.
pedestal here on this, but you can't just have a protocol for skin health or systems. Like, right, we're going to have systems, and hopefully we are holistic enough that we are going to tailor programs and things to, we know that we need to individualize things, but in order to really properly individualize something, you need to be able to assess a person's gut health. And if you can, like, obviously the best way to do this is to do, like, I prefer, but it is more pricey and not all clients are going to fall in this line, but I prefer a high quality DNA stool analysis that gives me a good picture. We train our coaches in that, they get access to that, and clinical grade supplementation, gut supplementation, so that we can use really quality probiotics and gut repair type products. I'm not a huge product supplement pusher, but when it comes to gut issues, we are dealing with stuff that we've worked so far away from our natural habitats and diets that we've got problems. And
Yeah.
so, like I said, to this main point, we can't come in with just a protocol for skin health or whatever, because I may be able to look at this and let's say, okay, you want to have great skin. Okay, you're going to want lots of antioxidants. You're going to want, maybe some healthy proteins and collagen, and you're and I can give this whole thing, lots and lots of veggies, okay, I can make like this blanketed assessment that has a lot of merit. But what happens when the person I'm talking to, their physiological body right now can't handle blueberries or something, or raw greens, fresh vegetables that aren't cooked, or even in general, maybe they can only handle juice. What happens? You'd be surprised that more people than not deal with these issues because their gut is in such a bad state, or it's so permeable. They're actually having even IgG food responses to all kinds of foods that are seemingly healthy and even necessary for a healthy gut microbiome. So
Mm.
what do we do? And what do we do, if we're going to do, if you don't know the gut, you're going to be kind of screwed in this, because it's going to be really hard to give somebody the right approach and then help them work toward a healthier state. Because a lot of these people may have intolerances to all kinds of foods and things, but some of these things can be very imperative for feeding good beneficial gut bacteria, like in the case of FODMAPs and IBS. So if they figure that out and they go to like a regular doctor, what's often taught is something like, oh, just avoid all FODMAPs. Well, yes, in the moment, if you're giving them all these FODMAP foods to eat, especially a lot, they're going to be going through physical hell, and they're not going to be trusting you or this process because they're going to be so miserable, right?
Mm.
And yet to follow that approach of just avoidance
Yeah.
is going to set them up for further catastrophe as well. So when we can understand the gut, we can better assess, even just off symptomology. But ideally, yes, if I can do a test and the symptoms, then that's going to be the best. But even just symptoms and stuff, we have a way of running through a protocol, individualizing the process so that we can take some of these blanketed, common denominators that we're going to put with most people, but we can tailor them for people and help them work toward a place where they can get their gut back together. That's the whole goal, is to strengthen the gut and get it into a better place where it can handle is more resilient to different things. Even if, God forbid, they have to be on an antibiotic or something, we're going to want a resilient gut microbiome.
Yeah.
So if you don't understand that, then you can be taking your protocols or like, hey, these are the most healthy foods you can find, and they can be detrimental to your client at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you and I could get explosive about this conversation. So it's just wild to me. And again, this is no disrespect to any training or anything that anybody has received. It's just so incredible to me that there's so much research, like scientifically proven research, and yet the allopathic medical industry isn't really up to speed. I'm choosing my words very carefully. Not up to speed, even so much as, dietetics and things of that nature. And the connection between some of these more physical symptomatic responses, which is why I think that if you are coaching you're coaching humans, period. So we all live in a semi-stressed out state. And this is why at least having a fundamental understanding of how the gut and digestion impacts the overall body and the connection between your nervous system and digestion, right? Because we have so many life coaches, for example, who work with burnt out, stressed out moms.
Mm-hmm.
Without even and I know that that's not obviously the industry that they're in, but it's like you can, and I'm coming from a holistic nutrition, which everything is founded on gut health.
Yeah.
And I'm coming from you can give them all this stuff, but if their nervous system is not in a relaxed state, like they can journal all they want, but like if their digestion is screwy, they're never going to feel physically better.
Absolutely true. And this is why I also work with a lot of mental health professionals. Like ideally, that I love working. Of course, I want to work with coaches, nutritionists, anybody who's doing this, but mental health professionals, it's huge for me. I can't even tell you, like we've got a very diverse family. My husband has ADHD. It didn't come out until 2 years into our marriage. It had come out his whole life, right? But it wasn't until he was married to a coach and had to co-raise 6 children between 3 and 13 that it really exacerbated and came out.
Yeah.
of our kids are non-neurotypical. Actually, five out of the six. One of them's high functioning spectrum. So understanding brain function and behavior and that gut brain connection is so imperative for all of this stuff. So I see mental health professionals, and I have a passion. I have a passion for mental health and suicide awareness and depression, anxiety, and especially in kids and the helpless. And when we're just going, I mean, we went to a therapist a while ago. I'm a huge advocate of counseling. So this is why we teach holistic gut health, let's just say that, right? Gut health is what it is. If you understand it, you get it. If not, something to look into. We'll talk about that. But holistic is mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and they have to align or we're missing a huge component, because it's fine to say like, okay, we can follow this diet and take these supplements, but the brain also affects the gut. And in that bilateral communication, 80% of it is coming from the gut, 20% of it though is coming from the brain. And so it is going back and forth, it ping pongs, and it creates this synergistic relationship for the better or for the worse. And so we have to come in holistically. And I remember so we walked in this counselor, and we're trying to talk about my husband's ADHD because he's working really hard, just very lost with it. When you've gone 38 years of your life without knowing about it and seeing that a lot of these hardships you had were related to a lot of lack of cognitive, prefrontal cortex and executive function and emotional regulation.
I was diagnosed when I was like 40. So I feel you. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this
you're the type that's probably very organized and
me? No.
yes, really. Oh, that's amazing. Actually,
like a hot mess. No.
Oh, that's great. But so you're smart enough to know you have people do that. Like you probably set up structures and things because you appear very organized. So it means you know what you have to do it.
Yes.
So like for him trying to navigate, like what the heck is, both of us even, and still raise these kids with the high stress load here, who are also all like in some form of spectrum, except for a toddler. We don't know yet, but it's super hard. And I remember sitting down there with the counselor, and the first thing we sit down, we're starting to talk about his ADHD. Her first question was, okay, and are you medicated? And we said, no, not right now. And she was, and why not? And that was the first thing she said. And right there, and this isn't me saying for or against medication. It was just so unfortunate that like, that was all they had to say. Long story short, for us, we went on to try a medication later, because you can lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink. Like he's his own, and it had horrible side effects. It was detrimental to our life, to his health. It took a lot to get off of it. There probably are other options that are better, but there's a ton of even holistic options and a lot of gut work and stuff that could improve that too. Why is the only thing that she said to us, is he on medication? If not, why not? It was so narrow-minded.
It's narrow. It's very, I can stories, right? I think even for those of you listening, you probably, if you have a passion for holistic health, whether that is like more life coaching with more sort of holistic modalities versus like typical therapeutic, talk therapy or whatever, or a nurse who wants to even get into coaching because you see, right? You see that this very narrow way of working with people and treating people isn't working. We all have that. And I think I know that the reason that you and I do the work that we do is because we believe with every fiber of our being that there are alternatives. And that's why we do this work, is to be able to empower people with choice and empower people with alternatives when, the sort of, let's call them regular means of care is so narrow. And I would say at this point, I don't want to say ill-informed, but there's just a lack of options. That's all. There's just a lack of options. There's a lack of openness. That's what I want to say. There's a lack of openness. My daughter has a genetic disorder, I think it is. She has Turner syndrome. And so we are monitored heavily by all of these doctors. And we see dietitians and we see all of these things. She also has psoriasis. And and so and she also has like gut issues, which is very much linked to Turner's. But not a single one has ever asked her about her digestion. Mm-hmm. Like not a single one. And I'm like, but she has psoriasis. Like, why aren't you asking? Like, And I ask all the leading questions because I'm like, I'm trying to get something out of these like specialists. And they're just, and again, there's not enough hours in the day for everybody to know everything. So that's all to say that this is why you, as a coach who has a passion for this, to specialize, whether it's in gut health or something else, so that you can bring this to the table, because there's such a need for it and there's such a lack of it in the general population. Let's talk about when people say to me, it's so saturated, it's so saturated. Like the niche is so saturated. I'm like, I don't think so.
Well, that's because they're considering it a niche.
Well,
That's because
right. I
they're
guess so.
considering it
Yeah.
like there's a lot of people that think they get gut health and they don't. I did a big talk a while ago for a bunch of investors. I asked how many people were familiar, and way more hands came up than I thought. I would be curious how many hands would still have been up at the end saying I didn't really learn anything new. It wasn't very many. They learned a lot new because they knew little bits and pieces. And when you get into the world, obviously, where like there's a lot of product sales and things like that, like lotion, probiotic lotion, or and like for your gut, like first of all, tell me what's in that, but and I'm not saying that there can't be a place.
Probiotic lotion.
Yeah, so it's like there's stuff that I think I've seen in shampoo. I mean, they're gonna ride this buzzword, right?
Yeah.
And you've gotta research and be like, okay, is this actually, really healthy and beneficial or not? But I think so people get this concept of what they believe it is and they don't understand. So especially like you brought up for life coaches and people, and or I say like in the mental health arena, right? It's not just okay, your anxiety and your depression. It's even things like for any coaches, motivation, impulsivity, guys. When I have somebody in front of me that's like having issues with emotional eating, okay, we know that mindset's really important. We know emotional health is really important. There could be ties to trauma and comforts, habits that they've adapted, right? This is looking at something holistically. I'm going to look at all of these things and say there's a lot working here. I'm also going to say, because I know the gut, that hey, if you've got a dysbiotic gut, so that means like more gram-negative bacteria, you're supposed to have 80%, gram-positive to 20% gram-negative. Some of those gram-negative bacteria have a purpose. They need to be in there. But when they're allowed to overgrow, when you're throwing off the environmental ratio, you will have problems. So this is dysbiosis. This is a dysbiotic gut. Okay, for any that don't already know that. And so when a person has dysbiosis, or so if they've got an overgrowth of these gram-negative or more pathogenic, ornery bacteria, I like to call them gremlins, then it's going to send a lot of neurotransmitters, especially if they have SIBO. So if it's migrated into their small intestine, we're going to see things too, but candida overgrowth and stuff like that. Guess what? Those gram-negative bacteria, their favorite food source is simple carbohydrates. This is a dream to them. And so because your gut bacteria communicate from that brain gut pathway, they send neurotransmitters, right? They easily send signals to crave their preferred food source. This is why you'll see cravings and taste for certain foods, whether it be kids or even adults, change as you start implementing more healthy foods in your diet. It's not just that you're conditioning your mouth and your taste buds to eat them. It's that you're actually growing the bacteria in your gut that thrive off them. And the gut bacteria that do us the most favor for our health thrive off healthy foods. So you're going to eat more healthy foods. Those gut bacteria are going to crave more of those things, and you're going to see more of that in your habits. So on the reverse, you're working with somebody that's really struggling with like a sugar addiction or this emotional eating. There's an emotional component. There's a habit component there. Of course, you want to make sure they're getting enough nutrition and calories in the day. How's their stress? Is their cortisol spiking? We're going to ask all that, but I'm also going to let them know too that if they've got a dysbiosis situation going on in their gut, this isn't just in their head. There's a physiological response. And chances are, if we do some of these things and we get the right probiotics in, we start turning that ratio in the gut, that some of these cravings that feel so hard won't feel so hard. It's not personal. That's what we're saying. Like, it's not just you. It's not just super personal. You're dealing with a whole complex situation.
Yeah. When I have clients in Zero to Clients, which is the program that we run, and they do intuitive eating, and I'm always shocked that whatever educational program is providing the certification for intuitive eating, I say to them, so like, are you going to address blood sugar? Are you going to address gut health? And most of the time the answer is no, because they weren't taught that. And I said, well, how do you know that, like, how can you trust your own body when, if you live in this world, you experience stress?
Yeah.
And so I'm fairly certain that there's some level of imbalance, like, you know, wonky blood sugar, and also some level of like gut issues where you can't really trust what the signals are
Intuition.
saying.
Yes.
Right? Like, how do you
I say this all the time, and it's so like, I know people are sensitive to this one, so
I know, same.
I
That's why I was like, "Oh, do I say
I
it?" But I
wanna uplift them in a point too. I wanna say like, hey, the partial concept that they have of the psychology behind
yes,
not putting all this
bang
pressure
on.
on it, between connecting to your body, feeding it with those foundations are really incredible. Like, keep expounding on those.
Yes.
However, definitely look into some of this stuff. And I guess look at the efficacy of your clients, because I can't just gauge the efficacy of what I'm helping people with or what they're putting into action based on their weight. 33% of people with metabolic insufficiencies are lean and seem skinny and seem like they're in great shape. I work with competitive athletes all day long, bodybuilders, bikini comp people with wicked gut issues. So the internal ecosystem, I've seen people have to actually allow their body to gain a little bit of weight, or as their hormones were swapping, their gut was healing, they actually gained some weight. I've seen things like this happen through the healing process, which we're not supposed to say healing, but let's just, whatever. As the body's recalibrating, we've seen it happen because that internal ecosystem is so important. So we can't neglect it. And I would say, just integrity wise, find a way to expand on this. Find a
Yes.
way to bring those roots of intuitive eating and healthy mind, how we incorporate some of that, because I do have coaches trained in that as well, with some of those fundamentals. So how we do incorporate that, like when we train them, is we have a client program, a 5-weeker that kind of gets people started. We call this a data process. So this is, yes, a food removal. It can be very strict if you want to follow it completely. But the process of doing this is just to give people all the best information and a process to gather a lot of data. It's not about completing it perfectly. How they go through the process will give us a lot of data. It will give them a lot of data about them. It will give them a lot of data about how their body functions, how their body responds to certain foods. It's also going to give them a lot of data about their mindset, about their emotions, about their self-love, about their internal dialogue. And so that's the kind of stuff we talk about a lot, so that what we're not doing is we're not putting this focus on perfection of food.
Mhm.
We always say life coach first, like look left while you're working right. You get excited for a wedding or something, or a new boyfriend or whatever, and it's like easier than heck to drop the weight, hit the gym, do all the things, right? Because it's like your brain is fixated on something exciting that it doesn't need to fixate on food and things like that. Right. And so like, how can we create that in our coaching practice? And this is the part with holistic gut health. So that's what I always tell the coaches. I'm like, it's a data process. And if
Yeah.
you approach that with your clients too, like, hey, this is comfortable. You're going to sit down in this protocol, and you're going to say, man, I was doing good, and then I just binged on pizza and beer last night, or I just ate like an entire pack of cookies. It's like, cool, let's unpack that. Like, let's just talk about that. This is a totally comfortable human place to do that. And we'll figure out, okay, there's some
Yes.
chance that this is a gut thing that is also making this extra hard. But
Yes.
also too, like, what are your thoughts about yourself when you're doing this? What kind of pressure are you putting on that? And it's just a space for growth. And so, yes, intuition is an interesting thing. And I don't want to long run this sentence too much, because I know there's probably a lot, but even intuition, I learned this even in being in doing more NLP work, mindset work, and being a lot of years of therapy and counseling, coming from a life that's had lots of reason to go to therapy and counseling, that I've always been such an intuitive person. I train coaches that are very empathetic. But I had to learn in my relationships and in my life that sometimes this didn't serve me. Sometimes that strong intuition was my self-protection mechanisms
Mm.
coming out. It wasn't necessarily the truth of what was in front of me. And even if maybe it was, I have to allow other people to tell me who they are. I can still have my boundaries and look out for myself, but
Yeah.
to go around saying, I can read people, and I read this, and this is who they are, and this is what is giving too much power to my intuition, that can also be rooted in other things like past trauma, self-protection, and all those things, much like our gut microbiome and intuition.
Yes. Oh, I love that, because it's so true. And I think that's the point, is that we have to be, and then this goes for everything, it's I think it's important to be well-rounded and to have a level of education, especially when we're talking about symptoms. You
Yeah.
know, we're talking about physical symptoms like cravings. And, you know, if clients are coming to you, whether you do, you know, intuitive eating, or it doesn't matter what you do. I think if clients are coming to you and they're coming to you with symptoms, as someone who is a professional, it's important to sort of step outside of the box that you sort of have been following
Yeah.
and really look at the body in a holistic state. And that doesn't mean that you have to go and, you know, rack up 17 different certifications.
Mhm.
It just means that you can have a secondary interest in something that is supportive of getting your clients the results that, you know, you want to be able to get them, especially if, again, if it is something symptomatic,
Mhm.
which I think is really, it's really important. And I mean, those of us who are into gut health will always, I think this is definitely the hill that we will die on. It's like it all comes back to the gut, like
Yeah,
in
and it's
some way, shape, or
all
form.
figuring out how to communicate that and how to reach people, because ultimately our goal is to help people. That's
Yep.
it. Our goal is to help people, not shove something down their throat and get them to follow a thing. If that's where we're at, then we need to recheck, because you're gonna be very frustrated, burnt out,
Yeah.
unsuccessful. It's not gonna work, but like with our clients and stuff, like even with the intuitive eating thing, right? I think a lot of people went to specific schools. Like us schools had to diversify.
Yeah.
We're the gut health school. Like I mean, like since we started like 8 years ago, there's been a lot more gut health programs that have come up, but we are like the gut health school, right? And so it's easy for maybe a coach to say like, okay, I'm a gut health coach. Like that's my niche because they went to the school. It's easy to go to a school for intuitive eating and say, I'm an
I'm an
intuitive
intuitive eating
coach.
coach. Yeah.
What does that mean though to the client?
Yeah.
I think it's more beneficial to sit with some of these things, take these educations as what I call a toolbox. Like, okay, my toolbox. There's Puss in Boots. I don't know if it's 2 or 3. I don't know. My kids watch. It's the latest Puss in Boots, I think, that came out. And there's this bad guy in it, and he's got this magic bag, and he pulls all this stuff out of it, right? That he needs, and it's like everything fits in the bag. Well, that's how I think of us as health coaches. Is
Yeah.
I think like we add to this incredible toolbox that we have. And so if you've trained in intuitive eating, there's so many great concepts that you've taken from that. If you're training in gut health, there's so much foundational education and strategies and holistic health and all these different things, right? That are part of your toolbox. It doesn't have to be your niche of your business. Like you can
Mhm.
take these things and
Yep.
decide your niche, like you talk about a lot more, addressing more what is going on with people. So someone who may be into intuitive eating, may be into like maybe their niche is better, uh, what do we call it? Sorry, I'm just like lost for the word right now, but like food addiction recovery, or like
Yeah. Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
like body
Like
dysmorphia,
emotional eating.
body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Something that like someone's like, okay, I'm like really dealing with these things. They're probably maybe gonna, and then they're gonna use a lot of these things they learn
Yeah.
in the intuitive and then bring in gut health and have to do it in a way. That's the
Yeah.
thing. You can have the information. It doesn't mean you have to do it in that way where you make people feel like you have to do A, B, C, or D to have this effect. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? You can
Yeah.
so personalize it for the right intentions with people.
Yeah. Yeah, and for the thing that the person is actually struggling with. I
Yes.
think that's the point, right? Is to have this type of education, because the niche, if we're going to bring it, you know, if we're going to bring it on home, right? Then and we it's the niche isn't ever gut health. And
Mm-mm.
I think when you are a coach, part of it is understanding the holistic principles of what is going on and having the education, but then also knowing how to take pieces from your education and utilize it to serve the client, I think is what we're saying, right? Where it's not this like super dogmatic way of dealing with people and this is the only way, and not being able to look beyond this sort of like hyper dogmatic methodology, so that we really can serve the clients based on what is in their best interest.
The best thing you can ever learn is human communication. like learning human communication is going to be one of the most effective components of your practice. It's what's going to bring the education to life,
Yep.
because it's what's going to help it stick. What's going to help you like mold to different personality types. And like I saw this guy, there's this really cool guy that I did. He was one of the speakers at the event that I was a speaker at, and he was a keynote. And maybe we talked about this last time we chatted, but he got up there. His story was ADHD. So his story was that he lived in a van, was $80,000 in debt, like almost suicidal, horrible depression when he got his life together. Now he owns like many, many multi-million dollar companies and things. Younger guy too. And he wrote something the other day where he does rock climbing and stuff. And he said, he had this philosophy that the problem is not the problem.
Mhm.
And it was so empowering to me because he used it when he talked about rock climbing, because they call scaling the rock problems, because like you don't look at the rock and just go, I mean, you can kind of have an idea, but essentially you just have to start the journey. You have to have the right tools on you, and you have to keep making decisions and navigating as you go. It's not getting to the top that's even the win. It's actually what
Yeah.
you cultivate in the process of getting there. So just like we address that in our businesses, our business journey, this is the same thing we're doing with our clients in their journey. The problem isn't the problem. The problem isn't the PCOS. That's what they believe their problem is. That's what they're going to listen to you about. But the foundation of it is so much deeper. It's
Yeah.
gut related. It's trauma related. It's, poor coping mechanisms. There's so many things that keep us from being really healthy, whole
Mhm.
people.
Every time I have conversations like this, it all, no matter what the topic is, it all comes down to, can you please stop being so scared and get your in front of the people? Because at the end of the day, we are the ones with this education. It is not, with all genuine respect, it's not the allopathic medical world. And this level of coaching, in whatever regard you do it, it's better than nothing. And right now, there's nothing. It's
Exactly.
better than nothing. And so just please, like, stop being so scared that you're not going to help people, because even getting them to choose slower is so much, it's better than what they're doing now, right? Even getting them to breathe properly, it's better than what they're doing right now. So, like, for the love of healing in general, like,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter how long you've been in this industry, how much experience you have, if you are educated in a way that provides an alternative to mainstream, the people of this world need you, because they're not getting it anywhere else. And it is causing them to stay stuck and in pain. And so this is what it all comes down to. It like fires me up when I hear things like, oh, but I don't want to, this, that. I'm like, oh my gosh, can you just start talking? Because people need to hear what you have to say, and they need that education, and they need your passion, and they need the support, and they need the encouragement. They need all of this. And please don't wait until you have it perfect, because it'll be too late.
Yes, and we train our coaches to be educators. So I'm like, don't go out there and sell yourself. Go out there and teach. Just go out there and
Mhm.
teach. You're not shoving it around down anyone's throat. We actually train them to teach. So we train them to teach Gut 101 class. It's a conceptual understanding of gut health that helps bring holistic gut health to life for a lot of people that don't really get it. They think just GI distress, etc. And then you're going to miss your people that, and you can pertain that, you can mold that to any niche you're in, mental health,
Mhm.
hormones, blah blah blah, anti-aging, doesn't even matter, it's all pertinent. But to not understand the gut and the gut brain connection, so that's from gut to brain very much, and then also from brain to gut,
Yeah.
past traumas and PTSD and unhealthy boundaries of emotional coping mechanism, how this affects our physiological body. To not understand this stuff is to withhold a massive opportunity for healing from clients and people.
Mhm.
That's why it's a massive thing that's missing in most conventional uh, mental health practices, and most. I train beauty professionals because it's like they got sick of, stop treating the skin on the outside all the time. Like their majority of what's happening is on the inside, So if you can bring that together, like you're gold. And but all that, it's missing. So it's so unfortunate to see that happen, to see people then driven toward routes where it's going to exacerbate their gut health. Like you said, reoccurring antibiotics. Like, for Pete's sake, I can't tell you how many kids, and this is one that fires me up. How many kids are getting tubes in their ears for recurrent ear infections when they're put on antibiotics super young, especially before the age of 2, which is going to have the most impact on their gut microbiome that can be hard to reverse back. And then every time they get an ear infection, which could be viral, we're not even seeing if it's viral, right? It's just a bug. It's not necessarily bacterial. But they're being just negligently put on all these antibiotics over and over. So now they are dependent because they don't have the good gut bacteria to come back. And so then it's just leaving just tons of issues at hand. We're seeing more asthma, then we're seeing more GI problems and skin issues. And we're at a day and age now where the most important thing to me is we are seeing massive mental health problems. And they're especially in our youth. And this is for a multitude of reasons, obviously, way too much screen time, all kinds of stuff. However, to not understand the gut, to not be able to look at that part of our children, to not be able to foster that and cultivate that if desired, is just unacceptable to me.
Yeah. Yeah. We could jam on this for days and days. And it's funny because as you were talking, I'm like, the headline of this talk should be two passionate women who care
Yeah.
about gut health. Because I think anyone who is into holistic health, this is something that just can't be ignored. It really just can't. So thank you for this conversation. Where can people go to learn more about you and also about the Holistic Wellness Coaching Academy?
Yeah, so you can go to hwcacoach.com for all information about the school. You can get there through theguthealthschool.com as well, same place.
Nice.
But you can also go to buddhabellylife.com if you want to check out the podcast. We've had some great interviews on there, holistic therapists and all kinds of things. There's some really great stuff on there, as well as, program information on certification, etc. Some free courses. You can try the membership. We have an educational membership for health coaches that we do too. It's all there's done for you content, a new class each month for my coaches that don't like to just take certification after certification. You guys have a code that I gave you. You can try a month free of that. Usually it's a 7-day trial, but if you put that code in, you'll actually get 37 days. If you don't want it, going to cancel before. But there's another free course for designing gut health practice on there. Just lots of stuff. So
amazing. We will link to the code. Thank you for this. Thank you everybody for hanging out, and we will chat soon. Bye.